What up friends, it's Ron here, and today we're gonna paint Steve Mitchell from the Mind of Watercolor. What up friends, it's Ron here. Thank you for joining me in another video. Today I have a surprise for you. If you've been following my Snapchat and Instagram stories, you've probably already seen me working on this painting, and I thought it would be a really cool idea to just paint other YouTubers, and especially from the watercolor kind of niche. I think it's a really fun idea, and a lot of you can just see the process, enjoy that, and also have the added benefit of actually knowing the person, and I just think it's a really cool idea. If you don't know Steve Mitchell's channel, it's called The Mind of Watercolor. I'm sure a lot of you know it. I'll put a link and everything in the description box. I learned a lot from him, and I just wanted to make this painting as sort of a tribute. I will say I'm really pleased with the way the characters turned out, but the background, not so much, and also the color selection, I think I could have done a better job at it. I tried a different primary set for that. But anyway, regardless, I hope you will enjoy the process and maybe learn something new. And if you're ready, let's change the angle and get started. Okay, so I'm starting out with the first wash here. And what I'm looking for is to try and use pure colors, okay? Because this is what I find creates interest. This time you'll notice also my approach to the drawing itself was a little different. I decided to already shade some of it and just give it some values, just so that I can see some of the more details in terms of the shadows and shades. I did struggle a lot with the face, with Steve's face especially. Like Rhys is a bit simpler, but yeah, I really struggled with it because the eyes really challenged me, and something with the mouth, I wasn't sure. I kind of nailed the similarity there. I feel like if compared to my recent portraits, this one didn't nail the similarity as much as I wanted it to, compared to the other ones, but I do think it is quite similar. So a lot of people from the feedback I got on Instagram recognized it immediately. So I think I did a decent job here. So I'm using now a bit of a different primary trio. Different from the last few portraits that I shared with you here and on Instagram. So this time I'm using French Ultramarine. I'm using the magenta, and also, no, not magenta, it was Pyrrole Scarlet, or rather Cadmium Red. It's basically the same thing, so like a really warm, it's not the same, but like a warm red. So I have a warm blue, a warm red, and the new Gamboge. Okay, so that's again the French Ultramarine, the Cadmium Red Light, I believe this is the light version, and the Indian Yellow. It's not that important, the new Gamboge, sorry. It's not that important, the specific version of each primary, more so than it's just if it's warm or cool, and also maybe what color it leans towards. So the French Ultramarine, for example, is a bit of a warm red blue. Okay, so in this case, this is what happens. And I have to say, in terms of the color combination, I'm not that pleased with some of the results. I think I don't like these grays. And it's funny because I used to really like the combination of French Ultramarine and stuff like that, but the more I do with the Cobalt Azure, and the more even the Cerulean Blue or even Phthalo Blue, I start to like these cool blues. For some reason I find that they start to work a little better for me. So that's a surprise. Wasn't expecting this at all. So what I'm doing now is just putting in that initial wash, trying to get things to be a bit of an indication of how dark or light they should be. Okay, so I'm not necessarily trying to nail the exact value, but I'm trying to get it to be close, or a bit of an indication. So I'm coloring, or painting rather, around the highlights. I think one mistake I did here is the highlights feel a little too white and boring for me. This could be easily corrected with just another glaze that's very light and quick. I didn't. I left them white, and I think they should have been maybe a little red. And maybe I should have left like a smaller highlight somewhere that's really more significant. But anyway, yeah, that's what happens.
So now one of the great challenges I have with painting the portrait is that on the first layer, it can be a bit of a challenge to get the wash to be even. Usually it does turn out even, but there are always areas that I neglect a bit. For example, next to the ear on the right, I just waited a bit too long and it already dried. This happens quite often, and sometimes you really don't have a lot of control over it. So now you see me do something a little different here. I really don't care going to the extreme of the darkest blue that I see there. Of course, it's gonna dry a little lighter, and then you will barely notice how dark it was. But for now, I'm putting in the color really dark. Okay, so I'm just kind of putting the paint where I see fit, based on the drawing and the sort of guidelines I put for myself from earlier. And yeah, that's what the first wash is about. It's funny, I didn't paint for like a few days. I did a lot of sketching and worked on some new projects I'm working on. Also a lot of video editing, things like this. So right now, as I'm recording this, it's been like 3 days of no painting. So I hope to paint soon, maybe today or tomorrow. So yeah, now we come to a point of where the beard is, and it's very sort of gentle kind of beard that just shows as a lighter value, I guess, almost white. I will it's not necessarily white in reality, but this is in this specific photo. This is what it looked like. Okay, so now I'm filling in the gaps between those very dark values on the left, just painting around those highlights. The left eye was really challenging. I don't know why. I found that it's hard for me to get it to look kind of symmetrical with the right eye, and I corrected this like 3 or 4 times, and it just became too much for the paper to take. You know, you're not supposed to really erase on a watercolor paper, and when you do, you have to be super gentle with it. And I was really pushing it, so I just decided I have to accept it for what it is and maybe try to correct stuff during the painting process. And I just found it really challenging. So I don't know, I guess some people's faces, for some people, are easier or harder to draw. Sometimes I'm working on a portrait and I just know that the face is gonna click. I can just feel like, and it's really individual. So someone else trying the same person's portrait won't necessarily have the same experience as me. And I don't know exactly what it is. I heard that maybe we're sometimes looking for things that remind us of our own face. Subconsciously that sometimes happens, but you know, you can say like a counter argument that faces that are very different from our own intrigue us more. So I really have no idea. Anyway, the mustache area is relatively dark, and then under it we have a lighter value that's not white. This is why I covered it with a very light kind of blue mixture, or maybe neutralized blue. And really just making my way around the face. What I'll try doing is painting the face, at least 2 washes, and then when I have the values down of the face, I can go on and like treat the other areas of the painting, like the clothes and the background. When I say face, I mean everything that has flesh tone in it. So like the face and then the hand. I usually work on these together. The one thing that challenged me, and I just decided as a spur of the moment to draw the background as well. Now, I have a lot of issues with when there's more than one layer of things going on, and maybe it's just an artistic decision that I should have made, of not actually painting the background, but rather painting like a very simple background, just one color. And I decided, and you'll see later on, that I actually color it. By the way, I love to paint noses red. It just works so many times. But anyway, in terms of the background, yeah. So I decided to actually paint all of the details, and I think it turned out to be a mistake. I probably should have simplified it a little more. Of the feedback I got, people liked it, but I'm not sure. I really don't know if I should have done that or not. I do want to mention one more thing. When you look at this painting right now, it's at an angle, okay, from the table, and therefore it's at an angle from the camera. This is why the head may seem a little too large, okay, because it's literally higher up from the table, and so it's closer to the camera. Okay, the setup isn't perfect in terms of, it does have skewing, okay, perspective skewing, so skewing the painting. So this is why the face may look a little large. Once you'll see this flat in the final result, you will see how it's not really skewed. So now there's barely white in the eyes white. This is something very common, and I see sometimes people make that mistake, but mostly people who tackle portraits notice the white of the eye is almost never white. It's usually reflecting some other color. Many times it's the skin tone, so it will have like a very light red tint to it. Sometimes it will be like a purple or a bluish tint, so just you want to pay attention to that. And yeah, now I'm just adding another darker wash to the hair, which I will blend in a moment. I'm using a mixture that veers more towards the cadmium red, less towards the French ultramarine, unlike the previous wash. And I find that I like that, to put in a one color on top of another, because shading with the same color can be quite boring. It usually is, and I think unless you use it as a means to achieve something specific, I try to avoid it most times. So anyway, now I just zoomed in a bit so you can better see all of the details on the face, especially now when I'm adding that second layer. And I find this stage to be a little easier than the previous one in terms of the technique. So it's a little easier to put down the wash because it's just smaller, the second layer, you know, it doesn't cover everything. But it is more challenging in terms of you have to actually observe the reference and really figure out where to put in the darks, where to put in the the midtones maybe. So in many respects, it's kind of each layer is its own poses its own challenges and stuff like that. So just slowly working my way towards it. I cut out less of the mixing in this video, so you may notice me mixing a little more, so apologies if that bores you. I just try to figure out what's the right kind of color I should be using for this. I ended up with kind of a green, so I have the French Ultramarine and the new Gamboge, which create a very dull green, and this is, I think, part of... No, you know what, the green here I specifically like. I think the white of the paper is kind of ruining some of it for me. But anyway, yeah. So now I'm putting in that green. I like to color and paint eyebrows green for some reason. So yeah. Today is actually Saturday as I'm recording this, and I went to sleep really early compared to like a Friday. Because I was so tired yesterday. We went to the market, me and friends. A friend of mine has a birthday today, so we actually went to the market. And by the way, you see how I told you won't notice how the previous layer was really, really dark in this area, so now you don't notice. But anyway, yeah, we went to the market and we just walked a lot and bought a lot of stuff and walked to the apartment and back to the market. And so I was really tired and I just went to sleep really early. I think, well, for some people it may be late, but for Friday night it was pretty early for me. So anyway, yeah. I think I will actually soon go out and sketch a bit and draw. I don't know if I'll paint today. I kind of feel like, but I don't know. This part is challenging. The iris and all of that area, like the inside of the eye, sometimes is really challenging. First off, you have to be really, really accurate. You have to really make sure you get the drawing itself, you preserve the accuracy of the drawing, let's say. Because you're basically drawing with the brush now. And you can change the entire drawing if you make mistakes. This is why I switched to, so I was using for the previous stage the Raphael brush, and it's more of a mop kind of thing. It's great for covering large areas, things like this. But now I have to have a little more accuracy, so I switched to my silver black velvet brush, which is a little better for these tight spots. And this is the smaller silver black velvet one. One skill that I didn't talk about as much, that I found really helps me with these portraits that I've been doing recently, is alternating between two brushes. So you sometimes constantly have to blend. And I see some artists, and I don't know how they do it. By the way, I thought it will be interesting to put in some red here. So I don't know how these artists do it, but somehow they just use the same brush for everything. So they just put in a wash, or like a small part of a wash. They clean the brush. They use the same brush to blend it in, and this is what I used to do, and it just slows you down significantly. And then I saw actually in one of Steve Mitchell's videos in the Mind of Watercolor, I saw that he mentioned that he uses two brushes, so one for the painting and another one for the blending. And it hit me. I was like, whoa, that's such a simple fix for that. And so you see me a lot here alternating between my larger brushes, so the Raphael and the Silver Black Velvet, and then the smaller Silver Black Velvet. I have two Silver Black Velvet, the size 12 and size 8. So you'll see me working with the size 12 and then quickly switching to the size 8, blending whatever I need to blend and going back to the size 12. So this is just one thing that, like a really quick tip that I discovered that can really change, like a game changer, you know. So it's these kind of small tips that you have to find out and collect from many sources. This is why I think it's important to expose yourself to many sources, especially if you're really looking to, here you see me switch, you're really looking to master a skill. If you're kind of enjoying, you know, just doing something as a side hobby in painting, you can kind of just find one person. This is true for a lot of artistic endeavors, I think. You can sort of find one person that does it in a way that's similar to the results you want to achieve, and just kind of follow them, learn from them, and basically become an imitation of them. And it's all good because you paint and you enjoy it, and you create maybe gifts for your family and friends, and it's just great fun. If you do want to master a skill like watercolor, which is really a complex skill set, I find that you have to absorb information from many different teachers. Not just to get these small tips, but also to get different perspectives on the process. I think then you can build a really comprehensive picture in your mind of what the skill set actually requires and what it looks like. Okay, so yeah, this is one thing that I noticed is really crucial. So now what you saw me do is mix a lot of the new Gamboge and the Cadmium Red, just to get that strong orange. And I just decided to try and add shadows using that kind of orange. Just thought it would be interesting. And this could be the reason why I'm not pleased with some of the colors here, because I really winged it in many instances. Sorry, blowing my nose. Yep, so I kind of, not to say I winged it, but I kind of improvised at the spur of a moment, and this sometimes works great. I find that it works really well on the first wash, and then on the second wash you kind of have to be a little more responsible for your actions. But anyway, yeah, this was it was interesting. Let's just say that. So I think hopefully the next portrait I'll post will be including the drawing process. I know I talked about it for a long time. By the way, now you see me blend a part that I thought wouldn't be blendable because it's already like 100% dry, or like maybe 97% dry. And funny enough, I was able to blend it in some way, so it was interesting. But anyway, yeah, I think the next one will have the drawing process included. You'll have to forgive me if the drawing wouldn't turn out as accurate as possible, because when I record, I find that it really hurts my immersion sometimes in the drawing process specifically. With painting, I'm pretty well trained, and so even if I'm recording, it wouldn't hurt it as much. But yeah, you know, as soon as the camera is there and I have to worry about stuff like that, and really maybe not turn around the work as much as I want, and sometimes I feel like the pressure of if the drawing takes too much time And you know, with drawing you have to work really slowly sometimes, and really measured and really careful and really deliberate. And so you'll have to forgive me if the drawing doesn't turn out as best as I want it to, or as well as I want it to. But we'll see. So I think what I'll do for the next portrait is I'll maybe just choose a random like face from maybe like Pixabay or another picture like website that has free stock kind of pictures in it. And that way we won't have to necessarily compare it to a person we all know and love, like in this example. And so it can be a little off in terms of the accuracy. Okay. I don't know, there's people shouting outside. I hope it doesn't come through too much. Yeah, so now you saw me putting in the very darkest darks here of the lips and the mustache, and I'll have to connect that part of the mustache to the beard. It's right now it's a bit separate, and it is darker than the beard, so I'll just use very light lines to indicate that connection. You see here also I try and connect the lip to this. This is really important. If you can have the wash be even, I think it can really help to get it even when possible, okay? Sometimes it's not possible and you have to take breaks, but when you can, I think it's really important to do that. By the way, I wanted to mention regarding the audio. So I'm still recording with my phone, which I think is a nightmare. It's not comfortable for me, and it's definitely not the quality I want. So as a preparation for my podcast, I actually purchased a mic that's supposed to be pretty good. I found like one that wasn't in the crazy price range, but still is super quality. So you can expect the audio quality to improve. I don't know, I heard like mixed reviews. It has like 4 point something rating on Amazon. But then there are some reviews that say that after a few months they experience problems with it. So I don't know, we'll just have to test it out. And thank you for offering help in terms of the the technical aspect of audio. I saw some people offer help. Thank you so much. I'm trying to figure this out and we'll see. I'm open to advice always. But I think it will be a major jump in terms of the quality. Also, the recording with the phone has a lot of issues with it because sometimes the recordings get messed up. In terms of like a recording, if I run out of space or something like this, the whole recording can be lost. And this is why I record actually in like parts. So I do, maybe this kind of video will have 5 recordings, like I pause it every 10 minutes. It's like a checkpoint in a video game so you don't lose everything. And I hate that. It's really making the process uncomfortable. Plus, you know, transferring it to the computer and stuff like that. So hopefully that'll improve. When I'll have the mic, I can actually record directly to the computer the way it should be. And so it'll make things a whole lot easier for me and you. And yeah, I'll use that for probably all of my narration videos whenever possible. And then I'll have to think about another setup for outdoors or things like this if it requires a mic. Sometimes the quality is great when there's not a lot of noise. By the way, I have a few really cool videos in store for you that I recorded outside. I recorded a meetup that we did of the watercolor group that I have here in Israel, and also another video of me sketching outside with my friend, and I think it's just, you'll find those very funny and entertaining. I think you'll enjoy them. So many good things to come. I know a lot of people enjoyed the kind of format I did in Paris, where I recorded a lot outside, and it was kind of a blog-ish feel to it, and this is what I'm trying to do. Ultimately, what I want to do with this channel, and now you see me kind of just mentioning what I'm doing here, is wrapping up that second, third layer of the darkest darks, and then I'll be able to move into other parts of the painting, like the shirt and the hands and things like this. But anyway, yeah, I kind of lost my track of thought. So I was talking about the more bloggish kind of videos. And what my goal is eventually with this channel is to really have it document my life and my work on the one hand, and this is something you've heard me say that in the past, but like just showing what I do every day plus the how-to and teaching. But then there's another important aspect that I never mentioned, so you can listen carefully. And if you're really like a loyal follower and you actually watch this entire process and listen to me, then you'll be the first one to actually know that. I have a new vision for my work. I want to make videos like more of a kind of a music videos, but not exactly music videos, of the painting process, and making it really entertaining to watch in terms of the visuals. So like recording at multiple angles, having really top-notch editing and even slow-mo and things like this, and time-lapse, like to combine all of these elements to create videos that are entertaining as they are, and not necessarily even just because of the painting or the painting process. So this is something in the making. I'm basically planning it out now, so it's not, I didn't even start to work on that. It will be also involving a lot of financial kind of investment. So just so you know, this is kind of the direction in which I aspire this to go, while maintaining the how-to spirit and teaching and really sharing what I learn on a daily basis. Okay, ultimately I want this channel to grow huge, and to do that I'll have to kind of include some more topics, not just watercolor and sketching. I want to have some more mainstream topics, and this is why I do the vlogs and the more creativity related videos, and this is why I also do the podcast, because I wanted to have a bit more of a mainstream art creativity feeling to it. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. And it means there's a lot of good stuff to look for that will happen hopefully in the next 6 to 12 months. At least will start to happen. So a lot of expansion at the moment. I experienced a lot of new things happening, and it's just really interesting to see this. It's like it's a bit annoying in many senses as well, because I feel like I'm near that quantum leap, I guess, like a large leap in what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, the quality. But I'm in between. I'm making the preparations, and I'm so close to doing it, and this is why I also sometimes feel a little impatient. But yeah, so now I'm basically done with, almost done with the face. Just adding some final darker touches here. Under the lip, there's a strong shadow. I will come back and add some shadows to his right cheek, which is to our left. It's an important area to get correctly. And right now, he had a very gentle kind of smile in the reference. And here I still haven't indicated it fully, and the reason why is because of the cheeks. When someone smiles, it pulls the cheeks kind of upwards, and the creases or the fold, the wrinkles. Sorry, that took some time. The wrinkles on the skin kind of become more prominent. Okay, so now I'm starting with just painting the clothes, and I run this at triple speed actually, ×3, because it's just really repetitive. You'll notice there's nothing too interesting here. All I'm doing is carefully negative painting around the sleeve, the hand, the collar, and the button. There's a button there that I left white. I'll color paint around it. I'm not really pleased with the color of the shirt. I feel, and it will change. I'll add blue and stuff like that, but I'm not. I don't know. This color combination is not mine, and not my most preferred one, which is again funny. I used to love this one, but in any case, I think the one thing I can say about it is that at the very least it is harmonious. Because I am using the same primaries and stuff like that. I kind of, by the way, paint over the shirt because the area at the bottom should be darker, so I just decided to already put it in there, just to have some more flowiness to the paint. And this is, I think, something that this painting is lacking a bit, and that is flow. Because I did the background and Steve and Rhys in separate kind of stages, and I really don't know how to remedy that. I think maybe just making a simpler background will help, or maybe just doing it all in kind of a more fluid initial wash. I really don't know. It's really a challenge for me. It's kind of in between the styles I work on. I did some landscapes, then I did portraits, and this is something a little new for me, I guess. So maybe I'm just the composition, I can simplify it or make things a little simple and easier for me. And maybe it's just a matter of better execution, you know. Maybe I should change what I'm doing, or maybe I should do what I am doing a little better. Basically, it all comes down to that. But anyway, I'm learning a lot from this, so that's okay, you know. Sometimes you have to go through these kind of mistakes and things like this to really understand what works better for you. I find that to be the case a lot with watercolor. So in the next few stages, you will see me painting over this shirt many times, many more than I'd want to. And the reason why is that it never got as dark as I wanted it to. I did learn an important lesson from some of the previous portraits, and that is that it's hard to get the first wash to be dark and even. And this is because the first wash is light and you don't glaze over anything. So you have to get the color itself to be very dark, but in order to get it dark, you have to add a lot of paint, a lot of pigment to it, and then it turns it into very thick paint, and thick paint doesn't flow as well, thus you get an uneven initial wash. So instead of getting the shirt as dark as I want to immediately, the lesson I learned is to put in a first wash that's at least even and kind of as dark as I can get it, but still have it flow, and then use glazing to achieve it. But it was a bit of a nightmare with this specific example because I had to negative paint constantly, and it wasn't really easy. I think maybe, I don't know if there's a better way to do this. Maybe if you use paint straight out of the tube, it will allow you to more easily mix very dark but also wet mixtures. I'm really not sure about that. You know, this is like my white space right now. This is something that I don't think I know a lot about. And it really becomes more noticeable with larger work. I think this is why it came to surface now, because I really notice this more when I work on larger pieces. When you have larger areas to cover. If you have small areas to cover, it's not that big of an issue, and you can kind of pull it off with a first wash that's dark. And this is why the second wash is much simpler, because you can go darker immediately. So I don't know, this is something I'll have to work on. So now I'm adding a bit of green shadows in between those orangey kind of midtones. These will be strengthened later on. Right now it's just an initial indication. It's not that important of a stage. I just decided to make use of the fact that the paint is still just a little wet to put in that kind of second layer there. And I'll have to constantly glaze over the shirt again and again until it's dark enough. And even when I'll put in the folds, you'll see that it's still. This was a challenging part, you know. This is why I say the portrait itself isn't necessarily as hard to paint as you think. What's really complicated for me and challenging is just the composition and making things look harmonious and working together, not just in terms of the color, but in terms of the actual result. So you'll see how, this is the important shadow I told you about. So you'll notice how this shadow immediately makes the face smile a little more. By the way, I'll soon paint Rhys, and then you will see I will zoom in on him, and you can better see all the details. I find this to be actually one of the most fun parts of this painting. That and Steve's face. The rest of it was a bit challenging, but their faces and Rhys especially was very fun. Because I don't know, it's just skeleton is a little easier to draw than a skull is easier to draw. But that's not a skull, that's Rhys. What am I talking about? So anyway, now you see me kind of blending in some of the shadow, kind of lifting some of it. So anyway, and now we get a closer look of Rhys, and I'm starting with a very dark value, and here I can afford it. As I mentioned, if the wash is a little smaller, the area is a little smaller, you can have it a little darker. Plus, it's not super dark. Okay, it could still go a little darker, but then I'll lose again the fluidity. Is there a word fluidity, or should I say fluidness? I don't know. Let me know in a comment below. So pulling from the left to right, being very careful. My silver black velvet brush, size 12. And what I'll attempt to do is paint over the entire head and then move downwards to the forehead, if you can call it a forehead. Rhys is a very special guy. And then connect it to the eye sockets and all of that good stuff. For this, you really have to just look at the reference, see where it's dark, where it's light, and kind of wing it. I'm really pleased with the colors I used for Rhys. So the head has sort of a yellowish kind of feeling to it, and you'll see me making that transition. I tried to cut out some of the mixing here because I'm zoomed in and you can't see the palette, okay? For these kinds of situations, I still don't have a good setup, meaning what I should have done, there was hair there, by the way. What I should have done is recorded maybe using my phone, the palette, and then synchronizing the two. And that way I can kind of embed this other video into here, but whatever, this is something I'll fix with time. So for now I just tried to cut out some of the really long mixing. So now I'm taking my other brush to blend it in. I don't know why I chose the Raphael one this time. Maybe because I wasn't just blending, but I was literally continuing the wash. So I just put some water in it and used it to extend the wash in a lighter way. This is exactly the kind of, and now I'm switching to the smaller silver black to blend it. I don't know why, this is kind of like some of the basic skills you acquire with watercolor, is that you learn, for example, you put a very dark wash and you want to just extend it, and it's very easy to do. You just take a brush, you make sure it's a little wet, and then you just kind of touch the edges of the wash and you pull it downwards, and it works fantastically, really. And it's one of those things that you really have to play around with the paint a lot to really figure it out, and it's not easy in the beginning. So yeah, that's my my recurring advice, to go back to basics. I think that's one of the most important things one can do to really produce beautiful work. And also, I always say this: if you do want to develop your own style, by the way, I really like the way my work process with Rhys here. But anyway, if you want to develop your own distinctive style, I think following others is great in terms of technique and in terms of just opening your horizons to what's possible and getting some inspiration. But ultimately, there are the basics, and the basics are the same no matter what you do. For each medium, for watercolor, that's like an even wash and blending and color matching and value matching and all of that. If you can continue going back to that and sort of treat it as a center, if you can go back to that center, you will slowly develop your own style, because your own style already exists within you. All you have to do is hone those skills to take it out into the world. And I think this is where some, especially younger people, get a little frustrated or confused with the whole style question, when in fact it's all about discipline and the basics, because your style is already a part of you. No matter what you do, you're going to paint a little differently than other people. You're going to do a lot of things a little differently than other people, even down to the way you brush your teeth. And so you don't have to worry about it as much, I think. You just have to go back to the basics. And I know it's like one of the most boring advice ever, but it actually works. So boring and effective is great. And I think if you get addicted to working on the basics, it stops being boring, by the way. So anyway, I'm continuing with Rhys and going back. I allowed it some time to dry, of course. Going back and trying to put in those shadows. I'm sorry I didn't zoom in as much in this part. I may edit this just to digitally zoom in on Rhys's part here. But it's not, I didn't zoom in with the camera all the way. I kind of wanted to show you how he fits into the entire scene. So if that makes any sense. So now again I'm using the small brush to blend the edges of the shadow. It's really important to get the edges clean, and I think even more than just getting them clean, I think it's important to get a variety of edges. And I think if you look at Steve, for example, in the forehead area especially, you can see how some of the edges of the shapes are blended very harshly, or just change very harshly with an abrupt line, like near the eyebrow on the right. But then some areas kind of blend together, and I think it's this combination that's magical. So now I'm just pushing back on some of the darker value I put on Rhys's eye socket, and now I'm coming back with a little bit of a darker wash for the inner kind of shadows inside the eye socket. And I do that wet and wet, take advantage of the fact that it's still wet to get the shadow to be very blurry inside the eye socket. Because the darker things are, the more blurry they become. You can test it out if you just take a picture with your mobile device even, and just in bad lighting conditions, you'll notice how it becomes more blurry and grainy. And so I want to take advantage of this effect here. So now in terms of the painting process itself, I'm kind of halfway through. But in terms of the video, we're 2/3 through because I just I fast forwarded through the future segments a bit more because it's gonna be the background and the shirt just constantly going over it again and again. But anyway, this is the really interesting part about Rhys, and that's getting all of the small shadows to indicate the shape of his face. There are some darker shadows there, kind of you wouldn't expect it necessarily, but this is what I saw in the reference, kind of counter intuitive. And I'm doing the same thing with the other eye socket. I'll take the silver black velvet, wet it, clean it on the towel, come back and kind of push back through some of the shadow to make it less harsh. Then come back into the dark value, put it in. Now it will be a little less dark because I already messed around with that mixture. And this all becomes really intuitive. You see now I'm adding more pure paint. This all becomes more intuitive because when you do it so much, you just kind of, I see myself working and I can see exactly what I'm doing. I can feel it and know exactly if it's too wet, too dry, how wet the paper is, how wet the brush is, how wet the palette is. These are all really important. In the beginning, it's super frustrating. You have no idea, and it's just all like a mishmash of lots of skills and different things you have to learn how to do. But then when you master it or become very competent at it, it just becomes second nature. When I see beginners paint, I can. It's almost like I can feel what they're feeling. I think this happens to any skill when you're doing it at a high level. You can see others do it and recognize their mistakes, and you kind of get an ouch moment when you see someone doing something they shouldn't. You're like, no, don't do that. And so yeah, it's just very funny because I went to a workshop a while ago just as a spectator, just to kind of see what it's like and see what kind of work people do there. And I could really sense when someone's going to make a mistake. And for example, one common mistake that I saw, this is really, by the way, when I think about it now, is something that's really easy to mess up, and I see a lot of people do that. You put in a wash. You want to work wet and wet, and you put in a wash, and then and it's too strong of a wash to begin with. Like you should have it lighter because you're gonna do wet and wet. But anyway, it depends on the specific instance. It could work in some cases. Anyway, some people they put in the first wash and then they come back with the second one and they just really use too much water and you know, it may seem obvious when now I'm talking about it. You know, if you go back to a wet wash, you have to have the color consistency in your brush stronger than the wash you're putting it into. Otherwise, it's just going to move all the paint away with the water because it's going to be too wet. And it may seem obvious when talking about it after the fact, but when you're in the middle of and at the heart of a painting process and you're so busy thinking about tons of things, you can sometimes really mess this up. And this is what happened. I saw like a lot of people do that. They put in the first wash and then they expect to put in some other color, wet and wet, and the brush is soaking wet, and they should dry it, put very thick paint on it, and only then go back to the paint. So anyway, this is a very common mistake. If you're gonna do wet and wet, always remember that if you want the color to be kind of injected into the wet area, you have to have the ratio on the brush much thicker than what's on paper. Okay, this is really important. But anyway, now I'm doing that second kind of glaze over the shirt. The nightmare begins. It's still not dark enough, and I'm continuing doing it more and more, and it's still not dark enough. But anyway, I should probably switch to a larger brush here. I don't know. I really don't know. I think I see sometimes people working with really small brushes, and somehow they magically are able to cover huge spaces with them, and they have no problems with it, and I really don't know how people do that. Really, I have no idea. So anyway, also I think there's not a lot of variety of the color here, and I keep making mistakes, so I dab them away with a tissue. I don't know if the shirt turned out boring. I think it actually turned out a bit overworked. But what can you do, you know? It's just, yeah, it's too small of a brush. I need to make some modifications now that I'm working on larger pieces of paper. So anyway, yeah, that's probably, I should probably use like one of my flats. The only problem is that the flats don't have that large of a capacity. So while they do cover a larger, like a larger area with one stroke, you need to recharge them more often, which is also very time consuming. So I think I should probably just, or maybe the mop one would be good for this one. The large, I forgot, I don't remember the brand, Leonard, I think. The large mop I have that I rarely use these days. Maybe I should start using it. It has crazy capacity. It just gets loaded with paint. It's amazing. So anyway, yeah. Now putting in the shadows under the hand, and now you can see the separation between his shirt and the floor behind him that I just did in one wash earlier. So now you can see it. I tried to put some shadows in the shirt and it didn't work out. They weren't as dark as I wanted them to. So I will have to do that with another glaze. Sorry for pushing the camera accidentally. That sometimes happens. Now there were some shadows on the table here that I kind of want to get just to create some kind of a variance, or I don't know, like a change. You'll see I'm just putting in yellow or kind of orange, muted orange in some places, and then I blur it out. So I think the thing with this painting is it just turned out a little too gray for me. I neutralized a lot of the colors. What you see now, for example, again, I just mentioned, is a very muted yellow. It's like, or orange. It's like if you mix yellow and red, you get a vibrant orange, or depending on the yellow and red, you get a happy orange or whatever. Then you put blue into it and it kills it. So I think I did way too much of that here. But anyway, yeah. Now I'm putting some stronger shadows under his hand. Again, it has to be thicker than what's on the paper. Here I wanted it to be a really soft shadow, so it's only ever slightly darker, not too dark. So yeah, a little more of the yellow for the other side of the table, and soon I'll start working on the background as soon as I finish with the folds and creases on Steve's shirt. And then you'll see me kind of just winging it, really, just trying to, my logic was, okay, I don't want the background to be too prominent and take away too much of the focus of Steve and Rhys. So I'll just have it all kind of blend together, which was a nice thought, but the execution I don't think was as perfect as I wanted it to, or as good as I wanted it to. So yeah, this is one thing I don't know. I really don't know. You'll just have to watch this and see. But now that I look at it, I think the way Rhys looks with the tabletop, I think that's pretty nice. So anyway, we're going back to triple speed, and I'll have to admit here I used a different blue. I used my go-to indigo because it gets super dark, and I just thought it would be a good idea to use that. And later on, you'll see me trying to shade using the English of a Nation red, which can get quite dark. So I thought it would be a good idea, but turns out it's just an illusion. It gets dark when it's mixed with another color, but when it's just with the blue, it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. So you'll see this in a few moments. So yeah, just getting those darker areas on the left as well. So now I added the English of a Nation red. Now it looks promising, it looks dark. Now look at it. But give it a few moments and it will just kind of, sorry for talking funny today, it will just kind of disappear. So there's these folds and creases running along the shirt. And you can see how the entire shirt should probably be a lot darker. And I kind of just, I think, gave up on it, and I should have definitely put in another darker wash. But I find that at the like fourth wash, it's way too much for me, and I become really impatient with it. So anyway, yeah, now I'm blending in some of the edges, and I don't, the one thing I don't like is how hard it is to blend the second and the third maybe and fourth washes. It becomes really hard to blend it in because you're no longer blending it with the paper, you're blending it with the previous layers of paint. And I found this to be hugely challenging for me. So anyway, yeah. Now just reading the shapes that I see in the reference, and I have to admit this stage was really challenging. Like, I don't know why, but something about this wasn't working for me, and I think I actually am going to go back. Yeah, I'm going back with a darker consistency, trying to get it even darker than that. Kind of messed up on the color. A lot of things here could have been done a little better, I guess. But hopefully you still like this work. I don't know. I'm really. It was a challenge, I have to say. This stage especially. But anyway, now we're almost done. It's really close to finish. The video itself, in terms of the painting process, has maybe like 6 more minutes. So now I'm doing the background. And for that, again, my rationale was let's just blend it all together and not use too dark of values, only next to the face where I want to get contrast. So I just kind of let it all blend. And I think, I don't know if I lost patience. I just didn't know exactly how to approach this. I think maybe I underestimated the importance of working slowly at this stage, because I didn't feel impatient, I just felt confused. So yeah, I should have probably just went with a simpler background. As I was starting to work on this, I was like, this is a mistake, you know, it's not the right thing to do here. But anyway, yeah, I just, once you put it in, you have to kind of, you put in the wash and you have to just wing it and hope for the best. So anyway, there's a few like books and documents and things like this in the shelves behind him. Negative painting around the shelves themselves, just to give it some kind of a form, some kind of an indication. And I'll just continue doing it this way, basically all the way till this one is done. So just letting things blend. There will be a second wash for the background. I was really struggling if I should do it or not. What you see now is also triple speed. I try to get a balance of not having it too detailed, but not having it too simplified. I don't know. I think one thing that could have fixed it a bit maybe was if I would have used warmer values for Steve and Rhys, and then cooler for the background. I don't know. I really don't know. It's one of those things that like you just have to move on, and you'll see your mistakes in a year, like something like this. Usually with these kinds of paintings, and this really goes to the macro process of watercolor. So many times I'll work on these paintings and I'll finish them kind of all confused and not knowing what doesn't work, because I will feel like something's not working, but I wouldn't know what it is. And then when I go back to them maybe in a few months, I'm like, okay, this is why this doesn't look the way I wanted it to, and this is why this doesn't look as good as it could look. So yeah, that's like one thing you have to take into consideration. Your growth kind of exposes everything, and this is really about accepting it. You know, if you can accept it and move on, then it will show itself to you. The one thing I'm really pleased with the background is actually the simplification of the books on the right. There's like this big bookshelf on the rightmost part of the painting, and I'm really pleased with how the books look there. It's kind of just using white highlights, negatively painting around what is supposed to be books. I like that. And now I'm putting in just the second wash with some areas being a little darker than the others. The thing is, the moment I see that I'm not getting the result I want, I kind of become impatient. I think, well, what's the point, you know? But the point is to finish what you started, and I think to learn as much from it as possible. And overall, I mean, I did get good responses, so I think it is a decent work. In terms of the actual faces, I think Steve turned out pretty similar. Maybe I'll try to have another go just for fun of it, maybe at a different angle. It was hard to find a good reference photo. I actually pulled one out of a screenshot of a video, and I really looked for one that's indicative of the Mind of Watercolor and like the way the channel is, and you know, with the finger like really pointing and showing stuff and emphasizing a point. Steve likes to do that, and also with Rhys. Really close to him, because in some other videos he was a bit more at the back, so I really wanted to capture that. By the way, let me know what you think of this, and I really appreciate it if you let me know in a comment below if you want me to do this for another YouTuber or another channel. I think it could be fun. I do have some ideas in mind that I will hopefully share in the future. In the near future, but yeah, just I'm curious to hear your opinion on it, and I really hope Steve sees this video. I mean, he'll probably see it. I already emailed him, and he saw the painting and he liked it a lot, I think. But anyway, I really hope he and his audience also sees it. That could be pretty neat. So yeah, I think it's really cool. I hope someone will paint me one day. I don't know. Maybe it will happen. I had a few people actually paint me, friends and just artists in some places. But yeah, it could be really cool to have a video of myself being painted. I don't know if I should do like a self-portrait one day. I think it could be a cool idea. I don't know. Maybe I'll give it a shot. So anyway, now we're really close to finishing this. Just putting in some final details of the blinds here. And I'm just going to sign it really soon. And I think this will be done. So now mixing some thick paint. I'm going to sign it. And I will show you what it looks like without the camera skewing the drawing. Okay, so you're going to see this is what it looks like. I hope you enjoyed this process. Okay friends, so I'm done here. I hope you enjoyed this process. Again, I'm pleased with how Steve turned out and Rhys. The background, I don't know about that. I was kind of trying, I was struggling between not overburdening it with too many details, but still getting the contrast around the edges of the face especially. And so this is something I really am still working on, just combining lots of elements together. I know I could have just went with a simple background, but I kind of felt like because I already drew some of the elements that it's better to actually continue working with them. But anyway, this is it. I hope you enjoyed this process. I still have a lot to learn. Let's change the angle and wrap this up. So friends, I hope you enjoyed this. Here's once again the final
result. I already mentioned what I think about this. I'm really pleased with many things, with some other things a little less. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope Steve enjoys this. And leave a comment below. Let me know what you think of this painting, the color combination, anything you want. I'm really curious to hear your opinion. I hope you enjoyed this process. Don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube. Also subscribe to Steve's channel if watercolors interest you. Also follow me on Snapchat and Instagram for more daily updates and works in progress and many, many fun stuff. And I will see you again in another video really soon.